Good evening. I'm Kirsha Hughes-Scandies, president of the League of Women Voters of Juneau. Welcome to the second of two nights of the 2024 City and Borough of Juneau Municipal Candidate Forum. Many thanks to our partners at KTOO and the Juneau Empire for making this event possible and providing it live on their stations and websites. We are hosting tonight's event from the KTOO studios, which are on Linget Ani. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active civic participation. One of the ways we do that is to organize this candidate forum to help Juneau voters make informed decisions. Tonight's questions are from members of the Juneau League of Women Voters. This year's candidate forum is divided into two parts. Tonight we will hear from school board candidates and Juneau Municipal Clerk Beth McEwen about Juneau's vote-by-mail election. And if you missed yesterday's forum with the assembly candidates, it is available to watch on any of our partner websites. And with that, I will hand it over to our host for tonight.
Hello and welcome to the Juneau League of Women Voters 2024 Candidate Forum. I'm Clarice Larson, a reporter with KTOO.
I'm Mark Sabatini of the Juneau Empire.
This forum is airing live on KTOO 104.3 and KAUK 91.7 FM. You can also watch on KTOO 360 TV, KTOO.org, and JuneauLWV.org. If you want to watch tonight or last night's forum later, the video will be available on KTOO.org or JuneauEmpire.com.
Juneau's by-mail election is taking place now through October 1st. Ballots were mailed to registered voters last week, and there are three ways you can get your voted ballots back to election officials.
First, you can drop them off in the mail with postage. They must be postmarked on or before Election Day. Ballots can also be placed in secure drop boxes that will be available 24 hours a day. They're located at City Hall, the Mendenhall Valley and Douglas Libraries, the AEL&P office, and the Stouter Harbor Boat Launch.
Ballots can also be delivered in person to vote centers at City Hall and the Mendenhall Valley Public Library during business hours. You can also vote in person at both locations through Election Day. Find more voter information, including how to apply for an absentee ballot, visit juneau.org/elections.
And tonight we'll hear from 6 candidates for the Juneau School Board. There are 3 open seats this year, and all seats are for 3-year terms. We will follow the same format we did for the assembly candidates last night. The first candidate, who was selected at random beforehand, answering each question will have 55 seconds. All subsequent candidates will have 45 seconds. We'll end with 1-minute closing statements for each candidate. And candidates, please be mindful of the timer and wrap up when you're close to 0. The timer will ding when you're out of time.
Okay, now for the questions, and we will start with Will Muldoon. How should school stakeholders participate in the governance of our schools, and how have you personally been involved? You have 55 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. So I feel that we currently have a pretty robust system for folks to engage the district at all levels. We have site councils, we have multiple committees. I think there's about 5 for the district, and then of course the regular meetings themselves. And so just like all other forms of elections and governance, get local, get engaged, start your school level. Site council is a great avenue for that, where we can foster and brew a lot of ideas that can ultimately go through the committee process and work and end up as action items for the full board.
All right, thank you, Will Muldoon. Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I worked at a school, so I know the site councils. I was on the site councils at Saïd Gastineau, and that was a great way to reach the parents that came to school for the site councils and who were involved. I would like to see more events in the schools, and I think that reaches the other parents that aren't always at the school and involved. I always would like to reach out in that way at the school during school hours.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan. Elizabeth Sidden, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Well, I'll reiterate what others have said about the site councils. As board members, we really rely on those site-based informed meetings. Those are the stakeholders in our buildings, our teachers and our parents, that can really help us understand what's happening at that level in all of our buildings. But then the committee structure is another way. Our meetings, public attendance at our meetings, public comment at our meetings, emails are a great way to engage, though hard to have back and forth. A lot of that happens like on the ground in Juneau, right at the grocery store, at Costco on a weekend, hearing from people what their concerns are and what they care about in our schools.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45
I
seconds.
agree with site councils as well and the board meetings. I'd also like to see maybe the board branch off a little bit and try to do some community task force where they can bring in members of the community to go towards specific things that they want to work on in the school, and then that way they can collaborate with the board members and maybe we can get some things accomplished a little bit faster.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm coming from the perspective of a parent a little bit more, where there's technically you can see on paper how there is good access for everybody at each level. But in practice, I think a lot of people, and this is what we're hearing from the community, are feeling like they don't have access to contribute or have their voice heard. And so I think probably just public awareness of what's existing would be a huge first step. And then, the things that these other candidates are saying are all good, but I feel like it's from the parent perspective, if you can't make that meeting at this time, what else can you do to be involved in your children's education? And I think just more education of what's available would be big.
All right, thank you, Jeff Redmond. And Amber Fromhurst, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think your question in terms of stakeholders and participation is actually, I'm personally going to take it as a challenge, because as a current board member, if I'm elected again, I know that I will need to be more accessible. Previous board members have had the idea of being holding a booth at the Christmas fair, and so I think more items like that. We are in a place where we need the feedback, and we're asking the superintendent right now for more surveys from students. I think I want to acknowledge that people are participating. It just doesn't look like the same. There's Power School. They just had a tutor link sent out tonight. I think accessing more of the internet for feedback, as well as looking for new ways to find that engagement.
Thank you, Amber Fromhurst. And Clarice Larson has the next question.
This question, we will start with Michelle Stewart Morgan. Besides school librarians, who should have the authority to remove or restrict access to books in Juneau's school libraries? You have 55 seconds.
Well, I'm glad that we have librarians that have, certifications, and they do a really good job. I think that the people in the school would work with parents, anyone who would like a book taken from there. I think it would be the school sites that would work with the parents and the families on that, along with the librarian. They have that special training. That's why we have them there.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan. Elizabeth Siddon, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I've served as the chair of the policy committee for this past year, and this was one of the policies that we reviewed, was our library materials policy. And in that revision, what that policy reads now is that those experts, our librarians, our certificated staff, can develop what is called a collection development policy, and that sets, with engagement from the site-based stakeholders, from parents, from students, from teachers in the building, from administrators in the building, how they will decide how to purchase or remove materials from their collection, and that those collection development policies are reviewed by the board annually.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
I listened into that policy committee for the libraries, and I was really impressed with the librarians' explanation of how they decided what materials were in the school. What I have heard from parents is that they're a little frustrated with some of the curriculum being taught, and they'd like their child to be able to be opted out of reading a specific book. And from what I've been told, it's like if you opt out, then you get a pass or a fail, not a letter grade, and that can be kind of harmful to a kid if they're really striving for a scholarship or something. So I think that that's something that the board needs to look at and address.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
All right, yeah, thank you. So I think, again, we're hearing some technical, great answers, what the policy is and whatnot, but again, it's from the perspective of the parents, the community. And I guess what needs to be weighed is if there's some loud voices about specific books, but they're a minority or they're very, small in number, that needs to be weighed against the betterment of the larger community. And so identifying, having a process to identify how big of a concern about this particular title is there, and then bringing that to that librarian that's the professional, and then relying on our policy, but hearing the community more is a big piece of it.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Fromhurst, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you for the question. It was a recent issue. I think at the bottom line, the parents or guardians have ultimate control of what their student is required to read or have the conversation to negotiate what is read. But on a larger scale, I think libraries are the cornerstone of our democracy. They're an access to information, and that is vital. That is vital of what information is available to our students and to foster their interest and to continue their love of school. So I think that means that it needs to be a governing board to have that, and our policies currently reflect that. I think policies need to ensure that there's public engagement so that they can have larger conversations.
Thank you, Amber Fromhurst. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks, Clarice. So we did have this policy before us in the last year. I did vote in support of it. It went through substantial committee work, addressing concerns from the committee about parental engagement, involvement, notification. The policy itself hasn't been too controversial for Juneau. I think it works. It's reliant on subject matter experts and community involvement, and I think that that's the best way to make decisions.
Thank you, Will Muldoon. Mark will ask the next question.
All right, thanks. We will start with Elizabeth Siddon for this question. And how can the board achieve better financial oversight to prevent How can this board achieve better financial oversight to prevent future catastrophic budgeting mistakes like the one recently experienced?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it starts with supporting our chief financial officer in fully implementing our accounting and budget software that we have, relational databases, having a solid understanding of our staffing and our positions, our open positions in the district. And then I think for board members, sort of leaning into, we have a finance committee and supporting the work of the finance committee, developing those monthly budget reports and bringing them to board meetings for review there as well.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
This is a tricky question. I've listened in on a lot of the board meetings, and some of the things that they have in play for, reports and getting the reports to them so they can review them are great, but if the reports aren't accurate, then we have a problem. So I think that the board needs to acknowledge some of the errors that are in place, and I'm personally concerned about our next budget year just because I think that some of the figures in there weren't necessarily calculated accurate, and I haven't seen it been updated and reviewed to reflect, what's been happened since they closed out that fiscal year 25. There's been some additions and some raises, and I think that stuff needs to be addressed so they don't end up in the same position.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so something I emphasize, some of the questions have been framed not as well as your question, where like if you were in that same boat, like what would you do? And my problem with it is just that we shouldn't be in that boat. We shouldn't have 30 days to decide something big like that. And so the piece that I would emphasize is looking forward and spending more time, maybe it's a committee, whatever format, looking forward a lot further, and having a plan before we get there. I think, again, we're hearing about policy, and I think probably there's good policy in place. However, is it being implemented, and are they able to look further ahead? And that's the piece to push on.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Fromhurst, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. And if I heard the question right, how can the school board achieve the oversight and prevent financial stuff?
Yes.
Right? Okay. So I would push back on that question and just re-center the focus on the funding, and the issue with our funding lately has been at the state. That's the governor and the inadequate funding overall for public education statewide. So I think, but within that context, the school boards, we need to advocate at our state with other schools that are experiencing the same consolidations and financial crunch. And on top of that, we are at a place right now where we have incorporated a new financial system, and so the new board needs to learn that system, identify some adequate reports, and as previously mentioned, forecasting our potential decline in potential budgets.
Thank you, Amber Fromers. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So as the finance chair, it's been a very difficult time, and I also serve as the analytics and data governance manager for the state of Alaska, and one of the things I'm focused on if reelected is building a semantic model of our budget, which we haven't had. We haven't had a regular finance committee, up until these last 3 years, but I believe the question was also framed around how can we avoid fiscal catastrophe, and the answer is we don't know. We just found out this week that the United States Department of Education is in a disagreement with the state. The state is looking to change the Alaska Administrative Code to outlaw a lot of the funding structures Juneau's used for the last 31 years, and so we can do the best that we can, but we can't stop those above us, and those are some of the items that are coming in front of us, and we may need to deal with this next budget cycle.
Thank you, Will Muldoon. And Michelle Stewart-Morgan, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you, Mark. The first thing I would do as someone who, with my background, is learn that new financial system. I would also lean on the people that we pay to give us those figures. And also, like Will said, really get involved in, one, getting our BSA raised and helping our teachers teach. But the financial situation, if you go in and just really learn how to do that and work with the people we pay that to know that, so you can explain that to someone else and understand it, I think that would be a big part of your answering your question.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart-Morgan, and Clarice Larson is the next question.
Actually, I would like to invite Ingrid Higdon, who is a student at Juneau Douglas High School at Yada'akathle, to ask the next question. Jenny Thomas, you will have 55 seconds to answer the question first.
According to Alaska's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 9% of Juneau teens attempted suicide during a 12-month period. How can the school board turn around this alarming problem among my peers?
That's a tough one. I think getting more engaged in the at-risk youth is important, being able to identify the group that is at risk and letting them know there's an avenue where they can talk, whether it's a peer group that's available that meets, once a week, whether it's an adult that they feel safe. I know that we have got some great counselors at JD, and maybe just making that a little bit more of a comfortable topic for kids to talk about, and making it not so taboo might be able to have the conversations easier and to be able to prevent some of the kids going down that road.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to how does a person get to that space? And I think a big piece of it is feeling like you can't communicate with your community around you, right? And so emphasizing programs that exist now and highlighting them and making them more accessible. So it comes back to kind of like a common theme with what I'm trying to say is we're trying to reach out to the community. We're trying to get input from the community and get that communication, that transparency, much more strength than what it has in the recent past. And that would go right into preventing these kinds of tragedies.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Fromhers, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. That is a very tough question, and I appreciate you bringing this concern to us. I think right now what I can answer is awareness and normalizing conversations about mental health. I think the other thing that school boards could do is encourage our administration to partner with other local organizations or regional organizations to write for more mental health supports. Post-COVID, those supports are kind of going away now, and so working with other places like JAMI or Search to write for some SAMHSA grants to provide some supports for teenagers and professional development for teachers, because they are the ones who see you most of all, and so giving our teachers to fill their cups so that they can be there for you.
Thank you, Amber. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Clarice, and thank you for the question. I would like to see us do a bit of a return to stuff that we used to do when we had more adequate funding, like expanding the teen health center staff, having on-site counseling staff. That's been greatly reduced, and we can't do that with our current structures, and so we need to rely on our partnerships. And I think we need to be a bit more aggressive and proactive in chasing some of those grants down. We currently do receive some grants for at-risk and suicide prevention, but they're targeted and specific, and I think we need more of a generalized partnership grant for student health care. I think that mental health is health care and that it's being under-addressed in this community.
Thank you, Will Muldoon. Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you for the question. I think I would ask you and the people that you go to school with, I would like to see teens talking about that and helping to remove that stigma. We did that back in 2015 and 16. We didn't have a grant. We went in as just someone who cared for Juneau Stop Heroin, Start Talking, and I sat with students and gave discussions with them on how, what heroin was doing and removing that stigma from families. And I had students that came and talked with me and said, people in my family are addicted, and it affects me. So yes, try to get the teen center and try to get adults, but also get teens talking with the adults more on that. We need support.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan. Elizabeth Siddon, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. And also, I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for the question. I think there's several layers that come to mind. One, some have been mentioned. I think community partners are key. I think what resources we can offer in the buildings are key, things like the mental health counselors. I think it's also important that students feel like they have adults in the building they can trust, that they can go to. Peer groups, certainly, but also that you have adults in the buildings that you feel like you can trust and talk to. And then the last piece I'll say is, again, a question for you. One of the things that's been raised to us, again, as the policy committee, is the use of cell phones. It's a national conversation about the role of social media in student mental health, and so that's a conversation we're going to take up, and we'll be looking to you first.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon, and Mark Sabatini will ask the next question.
Okay. To what degree are students in our district on track for post-secondary readiness? And how do you know? We'll start with Jeff Redmond, and you have 55 seconds.
Okay, so to understand the question, so how on track are we now? That's the question? And
yes.
How
To
do
what
we know?
degree are students in our district on track for post-secondary readiness?
Okay, yeah, I mean, that is, I guess, the big goal of education, right? And so we are striving to do that. What we're hearing from the board, the people that are already on the board, is that feeling of not enough funding for all the programs that we want to emphasize. And what I hear from the teachers from that side is just their hands are being tied by resources not being available. And so are we on track for post-secondary? I think that there's always room for improvement, and that we need to emphasize that. I mean, that's the whole point here. I'm child first, and we kind of get stuck in all the technical money and all this, but really we're here to serve the children, and I want to bring it back to that, and I want to make sure that that's where the focus is.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Farmers, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. At least the data that we had from last year, our two high schools, that they were on track. They were 4th and 5th in the state. But due to, again, state inadequate and inconsistent and unpredictable funding, I think the community of Juneau is knocked off course. That's not to say that we can't, that our teachers aren't doing their best to get us realigned and our students are adjusting. I think that is going to be the area that we, as the next board, will the next board will have to pay attention to, and those are the conversations that are happening right now at the program eval committee, specifically at the middle school level, is an area that we want to pay attention to. So I think funding again.
All right, thank you, Amber Farmers. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for that one, Mark. And so we've got our indicators of success report coming up at our next regular meeting, election stuff notwithstanding. But that is where we get the first look at the assessment data, and then we do a comparative with that in the end data. And Juneau's consistently done pretty good statewide, but as far as how we can just simply say, are we doing enough for post-secondary readiness, I think we have an underutilized resource in the university in this community, and I would like to see us bolster that relationship so that way. I can answer that, right? I don't know post-secondary readiness, but I know that our college professors do, and I know our university staff do. And just like we have our CTE council, I think that we'd benefit greatly from a post-secondary council.
All right, thank you, Will Muldoon, and Michelle Stewart Morgan. You have 45 seconds.
Oh, thank you. I've lived in Juneau for 34 years, I believe, 32, and my sons came through the school system here. And what I've learned as a parent and as someone who's also, went to school here, is some kids learn with their brains and some kids learn with their hands. So post-secondary is great for some kids. Some kids also do VOTEC, and they do that. They go and be plumbers and other things like that, and those programs are very important. I would work and continue to work with the state vocational. They give grants to people. That's how my son went to nursing school, and he was just talking about that. And COVID we're still getting through COVID and bringing those kids back in and getting them involved. And I think that's something that we can do.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan. And Elizabeth Sidden, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think the statistics recently are about 50% of JSD graduates go to college, and we get reports from UAS every year. Those trends have been improving, that JSD students at UAS are better and better prepared for the college experience when they get there, so that's a good indicator. But the other half of our students do go into the trades or go into other fields that aren't necessarily college, and I think we have a fairly good handle with our partnerships with the trades on whether we're preparing our students. We're expanding those opportunities. We have the Diesel 101 class this year, with the consolidation able to offer more of those CTE classes at Juneau Douglas High School. So that's bolstering the experience that the students have before they graduate.
Thank you, Elizabeth Sidden. And Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
Well, I think that we can always improve. I would like to see us incorporate the university more. I know that they have the UA Advantage program, but from my understanding, that's only online, and my daughter does better in person, and so she's taking an in-person class, but it's expensive. So if we could work with the university to somehow make that more affordable and get kids in the door and get their feet in the university where it doesn't seem so overwhelming to them, I think we'd have better success, just the same we would with apprenticeships, having like a job shadow. I know at Thunder Mountain they had, I think, a health class, and they went and did different things at Bartlett, and my son watched a knee surgery and he was blown away. Like, those kinds of things can spark kids' imagination.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. And Clarice has the next question.
Thank you, Mark. 2023-2024 assessment testing showed that only 33% of Juneau students met grade level expectations in English and language arts, and only 29% of students met grade level expectations for math. What policies or actions will you take to improve these outcomes? Amber Fromhurst, we'll start with you. You have 55 seconds.
Okay. I'm going to be on a broken record tonight. It goes back to adequate and consistent, predictable state funding. And that funding, so the school board and the school board members are going to have to partner to advocate at the state level for adequate funding in order to keep learning environments smaller, keeping our staff here. And there's some things that we still have to do the work. We still have to improve. And so I would say that the board would have to work with our administration and teachers to improve attendance. There especially is a need for increasing some attendance with our earlier, younger students. And then as well, I think, and it just slipped my mind, so I apologize. Nervous. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that this question really highlights kind of the quandary of serving on the school board, where the last time we saw an increase to the base student allocation funding was via the Alaska Reads Act, and it was $30. It was 0.5%. It was wholly inadequate to even pay for the program itself, and the Juneau School District actually targeted vacant library assistant positions to pay for implementing that program. And so that one really is just going to have to be funding and funding only. If they're not giving us enough money to comply with the mandates that they are putting on us, we need to go and make cuts elsewhere. And so we have probably done that to the greatest degree we can possible. And so I think that the only thing forward is increased advocacy at the legislature.
Thank you, Will Muldoon. Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, we're still bringing the kids back from COVID. I taught reading as a para during COVID and afterwards, and I saw that we needed to get those kids back in and get them back on track. The other thing is, which I witnessed, and I think a lot of the parents have, I've seen 36 kids in a classroom, a 4th grade, 5th grade classroom. That's too many. I had a parent come to me the other day and tell me that when their teacher is out and they don't have a sub, they just sit in the commons because there's nowhere there to teach them. That's something that we need to raise the BSA. We need to make sure that we can get people in those positions and that they feel that they have a safety and they're going to feel that they have a job and that they can show up.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan. Elizabeth Siddon, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. The question was about policies and action, so I'll start with policies. It's in the lane of the school board for the policies that surround curriculum review. So it's important to know right now in our elementary schools, we have teachers who are actively trialing several different new math curriculum, and those teachers who are on the ground teaching those students where we see successes in those different curriculums, they will make a recommendation that we adopt new curriculum for our math. So that's one of the ways the policies can help support that. On the action side, as a board member, I would support what we have in place already, which is called the multi-tier systems of support. It offers different levels of targeted interventions for as students need more and more need and support.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
I think everybody said some great things. Of course, we need the BSA, but if the BSA is not going to move, we need to get a little bit more creative, and I think that's where we need to reach out to community members and figure out a way to relieve some of the pressure on the teachers of can we get parent groups to come in and read with kids separate from the teachers so it's not on the pairs, it's not on the teachers, so that they can focus on the kids that maybe have a little bit more need for that one-on-one attention. I think there's a lot of ways that we can help bring those things up that it's not going to rely on the BSA.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I think this question also relates to the decline in enrollment that is a big concern here as well. Some of that's population, but there's also a lot of families that are just not participating in the public school system. And the number one reason is that their child either isn't engaging with the curriculum as presented or and basically, like, if it's not working for them, they're pulling. And what I do like about our school system right now is our alternative programs, and some of those are really quality. And so if a child's going to learn in different ways, we need to have alternate ways of teaching them within our primary system.
Thank you, Jeff, and I'll hand things over to Mark.
Thank you, and I would like to invite Karis Hudson, who is a student at Juneau Douglas High School, Yadak, to ask the next question. Will Muldoon, you will get it first, and you will have 55 seconds to answer.
What policy changes would you advocate for, if any, to address the impacts of cell phones and social media on students' academic learning?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, I know we have struggled with it. It is something we do get feedback from students, from parents. It's a one that's pretty unique that they see that one pretty similarly. To balance that, though, it's hard to have an absolute policy one way or the other bans. You know, I don't know that compliance is going to be that great. So it's tough. I think that one of the things that we do need to have a better understanding of, and this is kind of relevant to the discussion nationwide, is some of the impacts and data points. How bad is it? Where are we going? And we haven't really had much of a look at that. And so I wouldn't really support any policy changes until I had that in front of me, but I am aware of the issue.
All right, thank you, Will Muldoon. And Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 45 seconds.
That question is just going to continue because we're all very reliant on our phones, not just young people now. Even I can use mine. I did work at a school. I think it's important that the way things are these days, that kids do have their cell phones, because that's how we communicate. That's how we know you're safe. That's how, if anything terrible happened in that building, we communicate with our students and our teachers. But during class time, I think that's a good policy that the cell phones should be put away, and they shouldn't be being used during that time. I don't go to work and use my cell phone when I'm talking to my boss, and the same would be for the students. But you should be allowed to have your phone, just not maybe be on it when you're trying to absorb the learning.
Thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan, and Elizabeth Siddon, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you, and again, thank you for the question. This actually came up at the policy committee meeting last week, and I raised it to put on the agenda for future meetings because of the comments we hear from teachers, from families about the concern. So we're going to start the conversation. I suspect it'll be a long one. We hope it has lots of engagement from faculty, from parents, from students, because it is an important question, and it has lots of layers to it. Safety is certainly one of them. And so when I start to think about it, I could envision it looking pretty different at different levels. It might look different, that policy might look different at an elementary than a high school. But we're excited to engage with the community for what they think is best.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
Can you repeat the question?
What policy changes would you advocate for, if any, to address the impacts of cell phones and social media on students' academic learning?
I like this question. I subbed in the high school, and my kids were mortified because I took kids' phones because it was distracting them. I don't think cell phones necessarily belong in schools. I think that there's a study down in a district down south where they had a bag where the kids would go in the classroom and put their cell phones in a bag so they had them in the class if they needed it. It was there, the kids could see them, and then when they left class, they got their phones back. And I think that that's very important to get kids from being distracted and more focused and not have the attention. I mean, Snapchat goes off all the time. I mean, I think it's a big issue.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. And Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of have two angles on it. My 12-year-old daughter carries a phone to school. She doesn't have it in the classroom, but, it's a communication device. And if you had said that 20 years ago or 10 years ago, that would have been pretty obscene, I think. But it's just a modern world. And so I think turning it around and engaging the new technology and teaching safe practices with cell phone, social media, we need to have policy of what's happening in the classroom, but are they allowed to be in the school? I mean, I think that has to be addressed at the different age groups. But yeah, I think that's part of life, and we should just embrace it.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff Redmond. And Amber Farmers, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up and being here as well. I really appreciate the question because that means that this is a topic that even is resonant with your group, your age group. And so as a policy standpoint, I think what I can speak to right now is that this is a community issue. This is not an issue that can be enforced by the board, created and developed in a vacuum. But it needs conversation. I think there needs to be talk about and preparation for cell phone literacy. We're in a digital age. We're here to prepare you for your workforce. And so you're going to have a cell phone on the job. What does that mean? And so this cannot be a board-only kind of conversation. It needs you in it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber Farmers. And Clarice has the next question.
Thank you, Mark. How can our district better attract and retain quality teachers? Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. That is $1 million question. It's not just the school board. It's the assembly and everyone. We know that our community, everywhere, getting good staff or getting staff to stay is hard in Juneau. We don't have enough housing. It's expensive. I don't have a magic wand for that one. I do know that when we had our mines starting, they had transient workers, and so how they could get people that would come here and stay here and work in the mines was they made housing for their family. So we have to make this where you can come here and you can know that you're going to have a steady job and you're guaranteed your job if you're teaching, and you can have affordable housing. So that's bigger than just the school district right now, but that's something I would work with the city and the state to continue. I always have.
Thank you, Michelle. Elizabeth Siddon, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Well, if I did have a magic wand, I would implement a defined benefits program. I think that would be one of the top ways that we could retain teachers, the great teachers that we have in this state. And I think if I get more sort of local with the answer, I think if we respect the work that teachers do. Something has sort of gone awry, and we don't respect the work that they're doing as much as we used to. And we need to. As a board member, we have this great opportunity to go into our buildings every day, and I wish the community could come with me. I wish you could see what our staff are doing in our buildings and what our students are doing, because I think it would foster this sense of wanting to be a part of that and to stay and to really have a sense of meaning.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 45 seconds.
I would like to reach out to the teachers that have left and decided not to stay to see exactly why they chose to leave. Was it the housing, was it the retirement, or was it the way that they were treated? I think there's a lot of factors that need to be involved in here. And how are we recruiting for teachers? Are we just posting a job posting, or are we actually going out to colleges and trying to attract teachers and make Juneau look like a place that they want to come and visit? And I agree with Michelle, like working with our community partners to maybe provide some affordable housing or some kind of housing benefit so it's not so overwhelming to move to Juneau, because it's very expensive to live here.
Thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 45 seconds.
So I think this is, what I'm hearing is a lot of really great answers, but to add to it, having a culture of a place that a person wants to work at is a big piece of it. And so regardless of budget problems and political, issues locally and everything, having an actual good feeling at work and wanting to show up at your job every day, I mean, that's a big piece of it. I feel like it's almost getting overlooked. And how do you achieve that? Like asking people that quit, but maybe asking people that still work there. What would you like to see? How can we improve this? And then I think, again, not reinventing the wheel and just looking to other districts and what they have done.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Fromhers, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to and relocate the root of this is, again, state funding, and that lies at the state with the governor and those who are at that in that seat. But to attract quality teachers, it's a Juneau-wide issue. Juneau-wide, we have to attract some and keep our quality staff. So I think, but within the current context and the foreseeable future, there are some other things that we can do. I think one of it is stop attrition. And maybe that means more conversation between the HR policies and practices right now that can be improved. The other issues is supporting SB 88, a defined benefit program.
Thank you, Amber Fromhers. Will Muldoon, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for that, Clarice, and thank you for that, Ms. Fromhertz. As the Vice President of the Juneau Central Labor Council, I've been up there advocating for SB 88 several years now. I'm also a Tier 4 employee myself. So I definitely think that we need to see progress on that, and that's impacting us at the state level, at the city level, and at the school level. One of the things that I actually agreed with the governor on was his specific approach for recruitment incentive and retention bonuses. I think that if behaviors and factors don't change, we shouldn't expect outcomes to. And so I think that we really are at a time where we need to start being creative and trying to incentivize behavior through recruitment and retention bonuses.
Thank you, Will Muldoon. And Mark will ask the next question.
Actually, I believe that's all of the questions. So candidates will now have 1 minute each to give their closing statements, and we will start with Elizabeth Siddon. You have 1 minute.
Well, thank you. I'll start by saying thank you to KTOO and the Juneau Empire and the League of Women Voters and our students who are here tonight. Thank you. My priorities are looking at the curriculum alignment in our restructured 6th grade and our restructured 7th and 8th grade Thunder Mountain Middle School. My priority also includes special education. 1 in 5 students in our district are in special education, but I would argue that how we support those students impacts every student in this district. But more importantly, I want you to know and to say that I take this responsibility really seriously. I take every topic in front of the board really seriously, and I do my homework and I put in the time and I ask a lot of questions at the board table before I make up my mind and vote. I hope to continue serving. I find it one of the most rewarding places to put my energy, so thank you for your support.
Thank you, Elizabeth Siddon. Jenny Thomas, you have 1 minute.
I'll wrap up in closing and just say that I decided to run for the school board just because of looking at how it was going and the path it was going, and I thought rather than me sitting back and saying they're doing it wrong or they should do this, I would put my foot in there and try to make some changes and see what I could do to help out. Special education is important, getting our reading better. I think that there's ways we're going to have to get creative with our state funding, and I think I have some unique ideas that I'd like to throw in front of the board, and I look forward to working with people with different opinions and seeing if we can come up with a creative solution.
All right, thank you, Jenny Thomas. Jeff Redmond, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. So I stepped up to run because it's a very unpopular time to do so. There's a lot of turmoil in recent past, and I felt like this is the time to represent the community. And I come in as a parent. I am not politically minded. I want to just support the children. I have a history or an education in early childhood through the university here. I worked in preschool, like that setting. And I have my children in the system now. Coming from that perspective, as a voter, what I see here is you've got half of us are already on the board and trying to go for another term, and the other half would be like a new guard, of the new folks, some are coming in for different reasons. And for me, it's the cohesion of the group is going to be a big piece of making things happen. So I want to work together with everybody.
Thank you, Jeff Redmond. Amber Farmers, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to thank KTOO, the League of Women Voters, Juneau Empire, those of you that came here, those of you that are tuning in. Thank you for this opportunity to bring my points across and upholding our democratic system. I think I would appreciate your support. This moment in time, I believe I am prepared for a second term. I've grown into this position. There has been some big changes. I feel like there has been momentum in lessons learned that I would love to see through. I am from a family of service as veterans and prior military. I feel like being from a diverse professional background, I have a little bit of connections, like relationships here and there that partnerships is going to be huge this time.
All right. Thank you, Amber Farmhurst. Wimbledon, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Mark, Clarice, our students, League of Women Voters, Juneau Empire, KTOO. Really appreciate you guys putting these together. The reason I'm running is that we have been through extremely difficult times, probably the toughest the district's been through. But I don't think that those times are over. We've got this pending item with the United States Department of Education and our own state Department of Education, and one of the ways that the state is looking to deal with that is by changing the Alaska Administrative Code. And if that were to take place, that law would take effect 1 week before our budget is due. And by law, we need to pass a balanced budget. So it took some soul searching for me to file for re-election. I'll be candid on that, but I think that right now what our community needs is somebody with experience and understanding on these matters, because I think things will get tougher before they get easier. And so I would appreciate your support in joining the Juneau Central Labor Council, the ASEA Local, APEA, AFT, and the Juneau Pro-Choice Coalition in supporting me for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you, Wimbledon. Michelle Stewart Morgan, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me go last. I think sitting here, I'm probably one of the only people that just recently did work in a school, and I also raised my 3 boys here in these schools. And as I look back, we have a good school system. We have great teachers, and I would like to be there to support them. I would like to be there. I think the skills I bring in learning the new financial system and helping us get through that and helping us retain our great teachers, get the defined benefits. I've worked with the legislature to get laws passed before, and I think I can help the school district in doing that now. And I think it's a tough time, and I think I would be really good there because I've been really good in other places and brought changes.
All right, thank you, Michelle Stewart Morgan.
Before we say goodnight, we have a short video from Beth McEwen, City and Borough of Juneau Municipal Clerk, to remind us about how, when, and where to vote in Juneau's vote-by-mail election.
I'm Beth McEwen. I'm the municipal clerk, and we are in the process of conducting our local municipal election, which happens on the first Tuesday of every October. So October 1st, 2024 is this year's local municipal election. We are conducting the election as a by-mail election, and what that means is that you as a registered voter will be receiving your ballot in the mail automatically at the mailing address on file with the State Division of Elections. Those ballots are being mailed out on September 12th, 2024, and you have until October 1st to return those ballots. You have variety of ways that you can return the ballots. You can return them in one of our 5 ballot drop boxes that are going to be open 24/7 from September 13th until October 1st at 8 p.m. When the polls close at the vote centers at 8 p.m., so do the ballot drop boxes. We have 2 vote centers, one here at City Hall in the Assembly Chambers and one at the Mendenhall Valley Public Library. We do have at the Public Library, the hours out there will be starting September 16th, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Fridays and Saturdays, 12 till 5 p.m. On the election day, both vote center locations will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The City Hall Vote Center, located here in the Assembly Chambers, will be open Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock until 4:30 p.m. And again, on election day, 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. So you have a variety of ways to get your ballot into us. We are available to answer any questions about process. If you want to give us a call, 907-586-5278, choose extension 4. Voting in your local election is one of the best ways that you can participate directly in your democracy, and this is going to be a very big ballot this year. And so we have a number of questions as well as candidates on the ballot. We have candidates for mayor, one race for District 1 Assembly, one race for District 2 Assembly, and 3 seats for the school board. In addition to the candidates, we have 3 ballot propositions and 2 recalls. So there's a double-sided ballot. It is long. You'll want to do your homework, read up on what the issues are, who the candidates are, and vote for those that you are the most comfortable voting for. We will be processing this as a by-mail election once again, which means that all of the ballots received prior to Election Day, we will be recording those on Election Day, and the unofficial results election night will be for any ballots that we have processed up until Election Day. The Election Day results won't be reported out until later on, and we will be certifying the election with the Canvass Review Board on October 15th, at which time the final results will be certified. I really want to take a moment to thank all of my staff, our deputy clerks, Diane Cathcart and Andy Hirsch, who are making this possible, as well as the rest of the clerk staff and all the election workers who help make this possible. I especially want to thank the candidates who are willing to run and serve their community in this way. Thank you, and please remember to vote.
And that concludes tonight's forum. If you've missed part of it, you can find the full videos of tonight and last night's forum at juneauempire.com, KTOO.org, and JuneauLWV.org. You can find more local election coverage, voter information, and candidate profiles on those websites as well.
And thank you to our candidates. Thank you to those of you who joined us for tonight's forum. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for co-sponsoring this forum with KTOO and the Juneau Empire. You can find more information about the election on the city's website, juneau.org/elections. And to voters, remember to return your mail-in ballots on or before Election Day, October 1st. Thank you and good night.